Everybody joining me on the podcast today is Zach Keilman. Check him out on the UFL podcast, Pro Football Newsroom, and also around the UFL. We're going to take a little break from the March Madness, and hey, we have football also this weekend to check out. The defending champion, Birmingham Stallions, will be back in action on Sunday, but a great slate of games for Week 1. And Zach, I appreciate you coming on the show and previewing the UFL. Educate us a little bit on the Spring Football League.
Yeah, really. Look, I won't even advocate if your bracket's already busted. Like, what? Might as well check this out, right? Right. I mean, I'll be honest. St. John, when they lost, that crushed my bracket. So, I had I even less incentive to follow March Madness. But really, here's the thing: if you love football, and if you love the sport of football, period, and you love professional football, and I think high quality football. You and I already know this. The UFL's back, second year, or in terms of the merge, two leagues. It'll be the fourth year in a row that spring football is existing in some capacity with some ownership that's involved with these two. And honestly, I've been saying it, and others have been saying it for Pro Football Newsroom on our Around the UFL show, or even on other guest spots we've landed on. This is going to be arguably the best set of talent you'll have seen in spring football in the 21st century. I cannot say it's going to match the 80s NFL versus USFL talent, structures and fighting for that talent. But in terms of anything just a step below, this is really the best of the best right here. So, if you're wanting to get in right now, and honestly, I've seen a lot more chatter online about the UFL than I have any of the leagues the last 4 years. Nationally wise and online wise, it's getting a lot more interest. So this is the perfect time to get in. And I'm getting really excited when I see new faces that I haven't seen before. Say, my first UFL game I'm going to watch this week. And I'm like, awesome. You're going to really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's and the thing I think is good for the league is that it's the same 8 teams coming here. We've seen this in other leagues where let's add a team here, let's add a team here, which we know down the road that's the plan for the UFL to expand to get bigger than the 8. But I think that does that helps with the league, that some consistency and just kind of building with these 8 franchises before you kind of go too crazy with expansion. So I think that's a positive going into this year with the league as well. Or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they're doing is they're doubling down, and they didn't shift or shake anything up, and a lot of the conversation out of year one with league officials, you listen to Russ Brandon, you listen to Daryl Moose Johnston, especially Daryl, who is really, I think, the face of the league more often than not, besides maybe Dwayne Johnson when he does hits, or Danny Garcia when he does hits as well. Okay. I sense the WWE aspects involved. And I feel like I need another combo with you between that and the Cena storyline at some point. But that being said, yeah, he's been all over the place doing press hits and whatnot. And, they got out of the merger. They now aren't in a chaotic state of limbo, which then leads to a quick shift in the late winter to get things done. They had a whole season now to kind of assess what we can do to build the business and what we have to do to increase not only online and national exposure for ratings. Because again, those ratings were really good last year, but they want to keep making sure they're consistent, but they also want to engage. How do we engage and get the local people more involved? Because they definitely want to see more people's butts in seats so that it looks better on TV and also gets the markets more involved too. So yeah, this year, they're definitely trying to get now a full year under their belt without having the crazy. And that's the main message. The crazy from behind the scenes should be gone from merging. This is us when we have an entire year of prep where we are a united football league, and pun fully intended by that.
Yeah, and look, we'll talk about Birmingham in a few moments, but they got to do better with attendance. I mean,
I'm going to step right in because I know that's a common thing. There's 6 teams in the league that I think are lacking in attendance right now. The only 2 that I think get a pass, and I don't mean to jump in right away with you because this has been a hotly discussed topic for well over a year now. Birmingham definitely needs to be talked about. And I'm with you. Absolutely. But I also want to make clear there are 5 other markets that definitely as well we have to talk. And some I would argue even more so than Birmingham. My own Michigan Panthers, a lot of people have eyeballs on that because it's the most expensive venue in the league. Can they get ticket sales up to make sense for staying in Ford Field, which they should, by the way? But, they got to get those people in there. Memphis, we've seen a lot of local market engagement. They were the lowest last year. Houston, massive fall off because they switched venues and different coaching staff. No Wade Phillips. You brought in a CJ Johnson, who's had a terrible record as a head coach in spring football so far and really needs to have a good year under his belt. San Antonio feels like there could be some more that should be done. Remember, this is a team that used to have in the AAF 20,000 fans in the stands. That was what they were banking on. And this year they only have 4 home games. So they really got to hit those hard because of scheduling. But yes, Birmingham definitely, I think a lot of people point this out, and I'll throw it back to you on this. A lot of people point out because it's a 3-time champ. And I imagine that's what you're thinking, throwing it to you now is they're 3-time champions. So you expect that they should be hitting like at least 3, maybe matching DC in attendance rate. And I think a lot of people want that. And I think people point into that because that's the case. They're a 3-peater, they've been around
Yeah.
the block.
And like last year, the biggest attended game was the Battle House game, but a big reason why that was because of AJ McCarron. I mean, I'm sorry, you should not have the fans should not be coming out to watch the opposing quarterback play. I mean, I went with some people, a group of 4 of us, and half of us were Birmingham, and another half they're Alabama fans. They were rooting for St. Louis because of AJ McCarron. And I think, I mean, yeah, you want to get some fans to come in for that. I mean, you were going to have that, but I still think what you saw in attendance for that game should be the norm for Birmingham, not should be the outlier because AJ McCarron, former national championship winning quarterback at Alabama, was coming back to the state.
Yeah, and I've talked a lot with fans and friends in particular that are Stallions fans that I've known since the USFL kicked off in 2022. And, it's a lot of this comes down to how I think personally how they've handled that market in many ways. So, first off, I feel like, taking some of the stuff with the hub going to Arlington does affect the Stallions fan base because you don't have players as much in market. A lot of the fans I talked to, they really wanted players and they enjoyed players being there and present. That maybe it was in Uptown after a game, or they'd be out and about and getting to kind of connect with these players better. For Birmingham's sake, they lost that when they moved to Arlington and took the hub away. So that's one thing that I know is knocked. The other thing I've heard a lot of, and I stress this a lot too because it doesn't seem like it's talked about enough. The price increases for 4 straight years of football has really, I think, affected that market a lot. Whether it's the venue with certain pricings at the venue, because I know Protective, I've heard concessions are not always friendly at Protective. I have seen from the times I've gone there, but also the pricing model. They started with the USFL's mission of $10 tickets, just get in to watch a game. We're focusing on TV. Now you've seen, for season tickets, at least up until I believe this year, maybe not this much, but 3 straight years in particular were increases year over year over year for these season tickets and single game tickets. And they took perks away, that drives fans away too. And I think that one thing that the league realized, and especially with the reports coming out, coming more towards in the fall and in the winter with sales numbers for tickets and season tickets being down, is that, the league kind of screwed up on that in a bit. I heard some fans talk about how, last year they bought season tickets, and then you maybe noticed this, the league promoting $10 ticket deals for near every week of the season. And so what would happen is a lot of some of those fans that I would talk to, or that were, say, from the Horseman group, they'd be like, why am I spending a season ticket package when I could just pay $50 for 10 tickets in a promo code? And that's the rub, is where's the value then? Because I think that's the screw up there, is you can't promote this package and then have the ticket holders that are season long members get the higher price, and that, or at least the higher overall valued price for a same deal package. So that's where they needed to adjust. It's a bigger issue the league's trying to address, but Birmingham is a prime example of where the league, I think, went wrong in some ways, along with the fact just changing and merging and having the price models and what was more important change definitely has affected those attendance numbers, without a doubt.
And I'll say this too, just because look, in the state of Alabama, it's a college football hotbed. I mean, and then when Alabama and Auburn have their spring games, people go to those. And
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, the UFL in the future, the Stallions need to look at that. I say we need to know when Auburn and Alabama are playing their spring games and get with the league. So can we just be away that week? Because
Mhm.
especially last year when Alabama played their spring game, new head coach, Kalen DeBoer, Alabama fans. I mean, look, I'm an Auburn guy. I'll admit that. I know there's more Alabama fans than Auburn fans. So not by much, but there's slightly more.
Oh,
Uh,
sure.
but and I think that is something. I know there was a lot of people, not yourself, but there were some other people I think out there in the people who cover this league that poo-pooed on that. They said that's not an excuse. Trust me, if you live in a state, that was an excuse, and I think that's kind of and I didn't really mean to get on this Birmingham attendance conversation like we're doing, but hey, we're here.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
yeah, I mean, it's hovering over the league. Like, there's a few things that are like, you have great stuff like the ratings that I think there is a good chance they can go up. I know Fox is taking a gamble with Friday night games, but they've had some solid success with kind of doing sports showcases on Fridays, from what I can tell. So they're trying to bank on maybe they can get that 1 million on a Friday night to maybe kind of help boost those ratings for the overall on their stuff to help. Again, you advertise, and they're trying to get investors still. So, proof in the pudding. But on the flip side, proof in the pudding also comes with attendance, also comes with making sure that you're trying to get people in seats and find it the best way possible. And so your point with the spring games, I don't think that's wrong, because yes, Alabama's history of football stems greatly into college football. It has always been a college football state first. Everything else is second. There's tons of spring leagues that have been in Alabama, and arena leagues too. Doesn't mean that they've all been hits. And that's the thing is, you're trying to get it consistently back. The last time I think a pro team even was successful was the 80s Birmingham Stallions, but completely different atmosphere than it
mhm.
was now 40 years ago. We can't even compare that anymore. And again, even same thing, they were competing with the NFL at that point too. So, my thing is, yes, timing does matter. I've heard a lot of complaints from fans about, well, okay, spring game doing it the same weekend, a spring game of like a Bama or Auburn. I don't like that plan because I'd have to pick between those two. And if I want, I'm going to the Bama game. And it's like, okay, fair. Then I also have ones where it's like, don't play on Sunday early morning. Dude, I go to church. And people are like, maybe not me, but like some people like, really? Church or stuff like that? It's like, you don't understand. This is deep South, guys. Like, this is like the Bible Belt's a real thing.
Mhm.
Those numbers, and maybe some of those people do go and, are more invested in their community kind of religious group meetings. And that's, I don't know, I'm speaking to those factors, but like, this is stuff I've heard from fans, like same thing. So you have to address this. And it's like the most requested thing is play at night and play on Saturdays. And, that's where you then have a pushback. How do we schedule it when we have limited scheduled windows, and the UFL can't always schedule in prime time? A lot of their games, they schedule like Fox or ESPN, ABC. It's like mid-afternoon on weekends,
Mhm.
or because they have to, they'll put it on a like 12 o'clock, set. So that's the balance. But like, there's ways you can probably improve it, and find your best way forward doing it. You also need availability for arenas too. And you can't have a second year where San Antonio has 4 home games as well. That just can't fly next year either.
Yeah, it's all about where your teams are located, what's going on, just kind of looking, do the best you can. You can't always do what you want to do, like you talk about the Saturday nights
Mhm.
or Saturday nights or Saturday games. You can't always do that. But with all 8 of these franchises, try to, look at that the location and what's the wisest thing. So, but, they're learning. Like I said, there's a limitation on that, but it's still
Yes.
it's a learning process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. They're still learning. One thing that Sports Business Journal released about their strategy and kind of acknowledging, yes, there's national interest, but the local market interest is what's their big deal. Is they're trying to take nods from minor league sports, which I think is great, by the way. I really think that for this level, yes, you are a professional league first. I definitely will sit with that. I think on TV, you should project yourself as that. But I think marketing to fans, and given that you're trying to show you're a lower value ticket, you're a summertime, like kind of family product, like they always talk about, or spring and summertime family product, so to speak, is you should be more like a minor league environment in that regard at the venues you're at, and as well as with kind of how you approach being in market too. I know they talk about minor league baseball with the Sports Business Journal report. I think they should approach it like good arena football teams do, where you're selling football, but you're selling at a smaller scale in that way and getting families more involved. And I know from experience, arena football, a lot of these teams fail, right? It's like, well, hang on. They're still really good teams that do a lot of great things with their marketing and especially how they get their players attached with the community more. And that's where I want to see the leagues go is, hey, how do we get these players more attached with the fans and get these fans more engaged with the team, like some of the hub teams did with the USFL, where it's like, hey, like I loved Birmingham. I love having these players right here. That's a tricky thing to deal with, especially when you're trying to sell these teams off so you can then get them back and take costs off. And that's, still hasn't come to fruition yet. Just got to show that more proof to people still.
And just we won't stay on this too long. Just
Mm-hmm.
obviously the last month or two, there's been also news around the UFL. Before we get into that, some teams and how the season's going to look, the labor issues out there. Of course, you saw the story where you know Moose was talking about, he didn't show up for the media thing, would get released. The quarterback deal that was going on, between February, late February there, just, kind of all of this stuff. Obviously, it would be, I don't, just from what I've read and seen, I think we're going to have games this weekend, so nobody worry about that. But just,
Yeah.
Overall, what is kind of like been going on?
So right now, what the players are looking for in their side, they're looking for two main items that my understanding is what they're doing. So pay scale is one thing. So keep that in mind. Yes, a lot of the talk and a lot of the discourse we have had discussions online with different people and voices is that the players do want a pay raise. And yes, that is very adamant. They want to have something that's more competitive. I think in lines more of what like say the CFL is looking at right now. At least in terms of trying to get up to that number. Keep in mind that's probably not going to happen in 1 year, but they're looking for a way to kind of gradually get to a certain point is what they're trying to do with this CBA. The other main issue, and I think the one that's more been prevalent with what I've heard with players is healthcare and health insurance. So, these players they're under contract and their contracts, at least in terms of like being retained by the league, they stick in through like August through like late training camp. They are technically still designated with the league through that league season. However, from what I understand, the health insurance does not cover till August. So once the season ends, any follow-up appointments or whatever you need and such, they kind of got to find a way to circumvent that. You're covered in season to a degree, and for depending on players through the league year in June by the season, but that intermediate period isn't really the case. And I think what they want is between the pay, they want a lot of these players, especially ones that are returning now, some of them for their fourth year in this, mind you, kind of want to be treated like full-time employees. Like kind of like how the CFL and NFL full seasons go, where, you're there and you are part of an organization for an entire year. You're not just part there and part gone. And yes, I know that we talk about league seasons and some people will bring up, oh, well, the NFL players and then CFL players, they go home at the end of the year. It's like, well, yes, but they still stay in contact with their organizations and are, under those organizations till their contract's up. And I think that's what they're really searching for is it seems like we're just from listening to some players that have talked about this issue and some of the things that's come out, they want to be treated more like a full-time, UFL member. Yes, the mission is to go to the NFL. We see this every year. We've seen like 50, 60 plus players every year now between whatever version of this league has been XFL, UFL. They've gone, they'll get the training camp status, and then some stick, majority get released, unfortunately, or they go to practice squad members for some portion of the year. But beyond that, the majority of those players don't go there. And so I think that's what it is they're saying, okay, cool. Yes, we agree. If you go up to a league, yeah, you can release us from our contract. That's fine. However, the remaining majority of the players that do not get those opportunities yet, should they not be considered UFL contracted employees still? Like, that's the question I think they're asking is like, yes, we are seeing these opportunities happen, but a lot of these players still have to wait out till that late August designation to then be released again. And I think that's just what they want is clarity is like, hey, let's treat us a little more like full season players like other leagues do, is how I've interpreted it. So that's what's kind of on the table. Meanwhile, the UFL, they're trying to balance costs. They still own all the 8 teams. They still have to pay all these teams players. They have to pay all the venues or certain contracts. They're finishing up with contracts, flights, you name it. So to them, they're going, well, we haven't gotten the investment yet to increase that budget. So we still feel like you should kind of give us a moment. We can talk about an increase, but it can't be crazy, or we can't do too much. Meanwhile, keep in mind, they cut down 8 teams and consolidated ownership to where it's more spread out costs by owners. And they also are not paying the same rates for certain player groups. Like, for example, quarterbacks, they took a massive hit when they merged. They were not paying them a special rate anymore. They got paid just like any other player for the most part. So QBs in particular, you saw that QB boycott of their event before camp. That's a big sticking point, because they yes, every player is important to a team, but when you have a league that's touting their quarterback prowess for this season and they have taken back monies on that very important position year over year, that's a point of emphasis, I think, for a player group that's going, hey, we're helping make this better. Like, people are tuning in because we're helping making more explosive plays, and we're, taking that risk as well to be here. So then maybe we go, and some of us, again, seasoned veterans. Luis Perez has been through this for 4 years now. Mm-hmm. So that's a league star. Alex Magoo coming back. I mean, we can keep going. Again, it ties into, are we not UFL players? Like, and that's where the difference is. Is it going to be a developmental where they're trying to say stick with the developmental route, and we're not trying to grow bigger like that? Or is it going to turn into, well, yeah, we want the UFL brand to kind of thrive a little bit more and be UFL players, the UFL, mentality. And that's the challenge. That's what's coming out of the CBA. You're going to see next is, what will be the path of how the UFL identifies itself outside of, say, you do get that call up, because these guys are good players. They're good professionals. And this is a good professional league, the third quality professional league in the North America too.
Yeah, it is. So, it has been interesting, but I'm also glad we're getting the game, so we kind of get away from a little bit of that and just, we'll see how that works out. And I'll just tell this: anybody wants to keep following this, wants to know the latest on this, follow Zach, follow the podcast.
Well, I would say follow us at UFO Podcast. You should definitely follow Pro Football Newsroom. That and our buddy James Larson, our main insider here, are honestly the best insider in the biz for the UFL content. That's the man you really should be following. I appreciate you giving me that call, but I will always give it to James and PFN because I try and give them the good word. They're the ones that are getting all the scoops 24/7 and getting the best ones too.
Yeah, so let's jump into the football. Man, I told you 20, so we've already went past that part. So,
to be fair, I've also made this where I pushed it, so I'm definitely taking yours as well. But this is a good combo, man. I always love stuff like this. Especially league season coming up. You have to talk a little more.
Oh, absolutely. And then the Birmingham stats. So I want to ask this question because I think there is a debate within the community of UFL fans, spring football fans. Did the Stallions three-peat last year, or did they just win one title and then they were back-to-back USFL champions? What is your take on this conversation? Here's here. To me, they three-peated. That's just my opinion because the leagues merged. And if you want to get technically with it, okay, I guess they did three-peat because they did win the USFL because they had to win the USFL to get to the UFL title. But anyways, what is your take on that conversation?
Yeah, no, it's a three-peat. I had someone try and die on that hill very adamantly. That I also, by the way, I really appreciate him, and we've had great conversations in the past, and we had a little bit of debate on Twitter about this. No, it's a three-peat. Absolutely. My argument is that, I think the talent got better overall between the USFL to UFL, and also B, the UFL takes the histories of the two leagues and merges them together. Those records last for each one. So yeah, without a doubt, it's a three-peat. Absolutely. I know that some are saying, well, it was separate leagues. Yeah, but come on, they're merged together. Both those leagues, we learned just from record last year, were negligible at best, talent-wise different. It didn't matter. It was one game difference between the two conferences, and then it got evened out once the Stallions shut out the Brahmas in St. Louis. So no, I don't think that that's any argument. It's a three-peat easily. And definitely if we're talking that like whole graphic with like pro sports three-peats or like whatever, they definitely fit in that category because I put them up there. Again, it's a pro league, so I'm gonna hold it to that.
Yeah, okay. Like I said, we're agreement on
Yeah.
that one. And with them, so I was like going into the season with them, a couple months ago before the Magoo news hit. Okay, uh, Martinez is off the NFL. Matt
Yep.
Corral, who showed some good signs, I mean, really bailed them out in the USFL championship game against Michigan. Because I
Oh,
mean,
trust me, I know. Trust me, I know.
look, Martinez did not have it that day. That
No.
was just how it was. And then you see Alex Magoo is coming back. I said, okay. Then Jamar Smith is retiring. I said, okay, they got to go get another quarterback. Did I have Case Cookus on my bingo card of their third string other quarterback? Um, so I mean, other teams got to be looking like, hey, can y'all like share a quarterback or two with us? I mean, you guys got like three, without a doubt, starters on your roster, which they did last year too. I mean, I think we all forget. Some people forget how good Jamar was that first year when they won that championship in the USFL. But when you look at Birmingham overall, and this may be a silly question, maybe it's not. In your opinion, are they like the overwhelming favorites, or should they be?
I think right now the vibe is they are right now the main favorites, and it's just because even if you have this QB debate between Matt Corral, Alex Magoo, like how bad can that really be? Magoo, yes, he's removed by 1 year. He was playing receiver in the NFL to try and stick in the NFL, but it doesn't mean his QB prowess has gone away any amount. He still can be as mobile. We've seen plenty of video where his accuracy is still really top notch. And then Matt Corral's been in the system now for 2 straight years. So, if that's your main issue is the quarterback battle, and you look at the rest of this roster, and they brought in the best of their veterans from last season or seasons before, coupled with some new faces that have been in NFL camps or have been having NFL stints, which I think has been like the bread and butter for them that our colleague Nick Thorns brought up is that, they really recruit the NFL guys and go hard on that. That's paid off dividends. You know, yeah, how can I not put them as a potential four-peat champion right now? There's cases like I think San Antonio still is definitely a threat. AJ Smith's offense being a very easy to adapt to college style offense makes any quarterback really thrive. And they got a defensive Wade Phillips that still is very stout, but still, I find that very hard. And I think the other arguments right now this year is people are saying, well, now this year, Birmingham's going to play in St. Louis. They're going to play, in DC. And it's like, okay, well, we'll find out really quick. Because the main argument left from people is that Birmingham has never been tested by a true home crowd. And yes, they did lose to San Antonio last year, but I also would say that San Antonio came with a really good game plan. And as I said during our summer stock broadcast, Skip Holtz never loses twice to the same opponent in season, and has never lost in postseason. Sure enough, that's what happened. But that's what we'll see. That's the last thing people are left is can the Stallions perform in a highly packed crowd? Otherwise, this team's loaded again. I mean, injuries would be the main thing you're watching out for. But even then, Birmingham's weathered that storm in the past too during their three-peats. So, time will tell, but hard to say. I mean, I think Michigan still gives them a really good run for their money. They played them close last year in their three matchups. They just need to finish the deal is the difference and figure out who's going to play QB, and we'll talk about this in a moment. I know you and I were prepping for it, but like that's the deal. Michigan, I think, challenges them. But yeah, Birmingham's still the top dog until proven otherwise. I can't move off them.
It's probably bad. I mean, Case Cookus, I think about him. He finally gets to play on a team with a good offensive line, and he's a third string quarterback.
The fact that he's going to be the third string is insane. And the fact that he got dealt a bad hand on offensive lines 3 straight years, I feel terrible for that man. But man, as he lived, he's going to be considered a legend in this sport because, like, that run for the Stars 2 years ago was incredible given the circumstances. And I mean, dude still has the game. It feels like he is definitely over the years been shaken from just no trust anymore in offensive lines. But it is funny. He's going to be the third stringer, unfortunately. At least I think so. There's been some people saying that, or reports saying like, yeah, he's competing, but I'm like, yeah, I know. I like Case, but no, it's a Magoo versus Corral world right now.
Yeah, and I feel like Skip Holtz values people that's been in his system. That's why Jamar
Mhm.
Smith was I mean, I remember hearing Skip Holtz talk about last year in interviews, like Jamar was just like another assistant coach for him, really.
Right, right. Well, and here's how I think about Case Cookus. So Case Cookus was going to start coaching up in Northern Arizona, his alma mater. That was his plan, is he was going to start doing work up there. He comes back, but keep in mind, if you're doing it like Jamar, Case Cookus, again, if he's trying to get more into coaching, well, third string QB in the UFL is perfect. You're an emergency QB, so you still have a chance to play, but if you're trying to get better at like analyzing the game from the sideline and kind of getting used to that atmosphere, what better place to do it than under a Skip Holtz organization that's proven that they do give those opportunities, and they're a well-run unit. That's the thing. Like, it's not just one guy handling all of it. Like, yes, Skip does call plays and all that, but like, he does have a very well-run operation. So it's a great place to kind of get your coaching skill down too, as well. So he does have the opportunity if things go awry, but like, he's in a perfect spot to get coaching knowledge under his belt while also having a chance to still play.
Yeah. So again, I had to like do a double take when I saw he signed. I'm like, wow, okay.
Crazy. Because I would have been like, oh man, my first initial was like, could you imagine if he went to like Houston before Anthony Brown signed on, of course? And then like I second guessed myself and went, yeah, well, you know what? Never mind. Because then there's a chance he gets beaten up in Houston as well. So yeah, I think this was a good one for him. I take that back. I
Yeah.
backpedal from that one really quick.
So and it feels like with the USFL side of it that it's Birmingham and Michigan because Houston and Memphis, especially now Memphis with Ken Wisenhunt, stepping away from the team, that whole deal with them. With of course, we were talking about Birmingham. They're playing DC, and they had the same thing with Reggie Barlow. Different circumstances, but still, coach leaving a week or two before the season. Is that kind of how you are with it too? With it's Birmingham and Michigan on the USFL side?
For the most part, yeah. I Michigan, it's a little bit more so that, unlike Birmingham, where they kind of reloaded their best of meeting like new players, or Michigan basically brought back near exact squad from last season. Um, with the difference being that Bryce Perkins will be healthy, and they can analyze Danny Eltling to possibly be healthier to start the year as well. Remember, he was banged up for the back half of the season for several weeks. And so I think they want to see what he can do more with a year under his belt on that offense as well. Perkins has a ton of potential too. But I mean, they did a great job bringing back some of the best from the year prior, that were either guys that have been around the block, guys that maybe came in later in the year and showed out, like COC Mariner, who I'm kind of stoked to see how he does on that offense with a full year of prep, or a full training camp of prep alongside that offense too. And they added some other pieces too. Yes, they lost Wes Hills, but like, there's been a ton of hype for my man here, Jaden Sheardon out of Monmouth. Really super speedster guy. Nate McCreary had shown some reps last year too, but Matt Colburn was clearly the number one back for them at the end of the season. And I'm speaking from, again, I'm a Panthers guy first and foremost. I try and talk the whole league, but like, I love this team. And quite frankly, I do believe that, this will be the best shot they'll have at trying to take that top spot in the USFL. So yeah, they're the top two. Main question is, who is the dark horse in the bottom two to start kind of challenging these top guys? I thought it was going to be Memphis until they had kind of chaos with Ken Wisenhunt's situation, with him walking away. Yes, they are going to have Jim Turner, who has been under that organization for 2 years coaching. And I know him and TJ Veneria was announced are going to be co-offensive coordinating this week with a kind of a similar system that Ken was using to start. And I like EJ Perry a lot. I think that was a good spot for him to go. I like Troy Williams at quarterback. Whichever one they pick, or if they split reps, I think they can do some damage. And not too bad defensive pickups as well. But I don't know if it's enough to overstep at Michigan at a number 2 if I think they're the 2. Houston, similar deal. I think there's good pieces in Houston, but I have no confidence in the coaching staff of Houston whatsoever. Yes, they did revamp their general managers and the scouting department a ton this offseason, but it's still CJ Johnson, and it's still a similar crew that CJ's brought in. I just don't trust their in-game operating. They have great players. I love Justin Hall. I love Kiki Chisholm as receivers. I love the pickup of Anthony Brown. I think there's a ton of potential there. And I think you got some pretty solid defensive pieces too that they can build around, say like a Markel Roby and a Damon Arnett, who is someone that's a chip on his shoulder in the secondary. But I don't have confidence in that coaching staff. That's really the only thing. The two teams that I kind of look at their staffs and I go, I just do not trust them is Houston and then actually Arlington, which is a surprise because Bob Stoops' career. But Bob Stoops, outside of a kind of crazy run to the 2023 XFL championship, has kind of shown that he makes some very baffling coaching decisions too in this space. So yeah, no confidence for Houston. So it's really, to me, it's Memphis. If Memphis can overcome Ken Whisenhunt leaving, I think they're the most likely to challenge. But I'm leaning more confidence that you're going to, unfortunately, for parity wise, see a very top heavy USFL conference again.
The XFL side thing, and you just look at these teams, and especially for Reggie Barlow left, you probably could have made an argument for all four of them to come out of this thing. Especially now with St. Louis, with AJ McCarron no longer there. I mean, you got Manny Wilkins, who was there with the team, and also a new offense coordinator. You're going to have a different play caller there too as well. Max Duggan, I know a lot of college football fans are going to remember him from TCU. It's kind of interesting what their deal is. You mentioned Luis Perez earlier. I mean, he probably is the best quarterback in that division. San Antonio is kind of like, Wade Phillips are going to play great defense. What they're going to do with that team. Keilman, they bringing him in at quarterback. Look, as an SEC fan, Garrett Garanchano, every time I see him, I just say, okay, how is this guy still quarterback somewhere? I just do not know. And then, DC, they bring in Jordan Chamu. I know I'm just naming off the quarterbacks, but just that's where it all starts. But it's how do you see this division? Because again, it seems like all four of them are capable of being in those two spots for the playoffs.
Yeah, Phillip, I'm with you. The XFL conference to me is way more wide open on paper. And I know I just put on a miniature tirade about Bob Stoops and the coaching. However, I have to stress, if they can find some way to get defensive prowess where they're not giving up chunk plays, if they can step out of their way with mistakes and find some sort of ground game this year, Arlington has a chance to be one of those potential teams that could make a leap up to a 2. But even then, I think that I'm still slightly more confident in DC possibly causing havoc this year and getting back up into a playoff berth to then challenge for that XFL conference championship. The only one that seems locked in that I think most people agree concurrently is going to be that de facto XFL team is the Brahmas, because it seems like all they did was, they had some minor tweaks here or there, but they brought in possibly a more upside talented quarterback in a Kellen Mond, who has been looking to get reps. Even then behind him, Kevin Hogan and then Garantano, those aren't too bad quarterbacks to have if you want like safety nets. Hogan's, of course, an older vet, but, still can possibly come in relief help. Garantano has a ton of potential he had in Houston. He just was not healthy. And it was a team that really needed stability with Reed Sinnett when he stepped in. So he never really hit the field. So to me, San Antonio, barring, again, surprise between quarterback, the running back situation with Anthony McFarland. McFarland's fantastic. They got great receiving options. Wade Phillips' defense has always been really well coached, no matter where he's been. And that's something that helps, is you can always have a very disciplined defense that does great job at kind of holding down the fort. So yeah, they're the only one that really is held in, I think, as a true lock-in. Then it comes down to everyone else. And I think the true battle, as much as I think Arlington has a shot, the real one's going to come down between DC and St. Louis. St. Louis, with the loss of AJ McCarron, they do have a ton of offensive pieces that came back that can help keep that offense kind of churning in the same production, but they did lose Bruce Gradkowski as offensive coordinator. How does that offense look without Bruce? Who at quarterback takes over truly as number one? Because Manny Wilkins and Max Dugan are splitting reps to start the year. So you have the system guy from last year who filled in versus the new guy on the block that I think a lot of people want to see because he has a ton of star power on him. So who kind of takes over that power struggle, and then their defense still has a lot of good returning players. So really it's finding out how good this offense is to kick things off. How good is it going to be operated? And then for DC, they're leaning on old philosophy. Abram Smith's healthy. They brought Jordan Ta'amu back. They do have some receivers I do like in Chris Rowland and Ty Scott. Ty Scott's going to have hopefully more opportunity this year than just being a deep ball threat. So I want to see him excel as well. But a lot of that philosophy is leaning on, can we do open the run up to then bring the pass back for Jordan Ta'amu and protect Jordan Ta'amu? Because we saw last year, Jordan cannot play hero ball. He's a great, as we said on around the UFL via Nick Thorne, he pointed this out best, great point guard quarterback, not your guy you want to be leading and doing like a Luis Perez where he's the one operating and creating offense. So that's the rub. Does Abram Smith coming off an ACL injury look like himself? And can they create opportunities through the pass to allow that to open up? And then can Greg Williams' defense get back to its form from 2023, where it was an opportunistic, aggressive defense that didn't kind of have mental lapses on plays? That's something that Greg got slammed on a lot last year, was it felt like his defense just kind of honestly fell apart and got the bad side of the Greg Williams, too aggressive in terrible situations. So if they can balance that, DC has a legitimate shot to leapfrog St. Louis, but that depends on St. Louis's offense showing that it can produce like it did last season with AJ McCarron. So those two will be the ones I think people are going to watch the closest, but don't be surprised if Arlington, if they can just get a little bit together and overcome some of the lapses with Bob Stoops' coaching, they may have a chance to leap too. I'm not disclosing them. The XFL conference is the exciting of the two, without a doubt. It's the most wide open, hands down.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And, and starting this weekend, so I'm not going to run through all 4 games with you. I just looking at the schedule. That San Antonio at Arlington game Saturday on Fox, 3 o'clock Central Time. But that looks like the best matchup on paper for week 1. Is there a matchup for you that you're really looking forward to for this weekend?
I looked at the matchups here, and I will say, just talking with people, I am kind of stoked to see Birmingham, DC. A lot of people have been bringing up in our conversations on our Discord server, PFN Discord, by the way. Check that out just via links on our pages or on profootballnewsroom.com. That, again, DC, like we talk about, they could have a chance to get back up and be a legitimate contender. So this is a really good test for them. It also plays into that Birmingham, the whole point of, can Birmingham play in big crowds and like in home venues that are not empty? Because that's like the one thing, again, they get slammed for it, is like people are like, well, they never really played in a big venue. It's like, we'll find out now. Like, you're going to play in the second rowdiest venue, and some people argue the rowdiest venue in the league. I would say second rowdiest just by on size, but the Defenders' home crowd is notorious. You know how this goes. We've seen the lemons. We've seen the craziness with the fans and super fans. We see the soccer stadium stands in I believe it's the south end zone. I forget which direction, but it gets rowdy out there. So, they're going to get tested real quick too, as well, to see how they handle kind of that environment. And I think that might put things to bed if they take care of business. But DC, I think, has more pressure to perform because this is a team that's leaning on its laurels from 2 years ago. But that game could have some surprises. If Birmingham comes out sluggish, or, say they split reps and unfortunately the split reps maybe like gets them in a bad spot, that could be a steal of a game for DC early to kind of get out of the way, especially for a very competitive conference that, remember, yes, it does come to tiebreakers, but you do want to get as many wins as you can against your non-conference opponents, especially against Birmingham. That would be a huge win to start the season.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one too, as well. Like you said, I mean, the pieces are there. Just the coaching situation. That's the big deal. But keeping everybody in place. So it's going to be fun. I can't wait this weekend. Look, I'll have one screen on March Madness on the NCAA tournament. Because hey, the Auburn Tigers are involved in all this. Hopefully on Sunday too. But I also have another one on the UFL, so we'll be double screening all weekend long. And Zach, this has been fun. We were going to do 20. We've done over 40 minutes. I feel like we could do another 40, but it's been fun having you all talking all things UFL. If the listener viewers want to check you out, where can they find you and all the work you're doing?
Yeah, man. Hey, I'm glad to hit up and talk to you. Always enjoy the conversations you and I have. And it's funny how every time I've jumped on with you the last few times, it's like, oh, look, the time we talked about, but it's because we're having a good time. By the way, catch up with me if you want. I got my own social channels, is all at Zach Keilman, just the name here, like it's shown on the screen. You can also check out the shows, which I recommend, at Around the UFL. It's Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern time on the UFO podcast YouTube channel. That's a roundtable discussion. I'm there, the ref's there, James Larson, Nick Thorne, who I brought up as well, and a bunch of other cast members. Ducky, if you like him as well, Jake Ball, my guy, who's doing the Panthers shadow stuff. So 2 Panthers fans kind of collaborating there. But yeah, we do that Mondays at 6 throughout the season. Guests, news, analysis of the week that was in the UFL. And then you should check out the UFL podcast. We kind of start as the preview to the week between me and the ref. We've been going strong now for 98 episodes and counting. 100th episode coming up actually this next week. So that'll be really insane. And then 99th coming up this week too. So yeah, stick around to that. And we're also going to be hosting on Friday night. Sorry, I'm used to Saturdays with this. Friday, 3:00 Central is what it's going to look like, 4:00 Eastern. Springstock 4, our 4th iteration of our live tailgate show from the kickoff of the USFL or now UFL seasons is going to be March 28th at the Green Lot at TD Stadium, now Space City Credit Union Stadium. Definitely don't want to miss that. We're going to have grilling and cooking out, having a good time. Guests are going to be there like Ducky or James Baker, who does some amazing highlight edits and is part of PFN's whole group. We're going to talk with James Larson virtually and just have a good time. Springstock, if you haven't watched it, it's a great live event every year. We're glad we've done 4 years and 4 years strong of it. And I can't wait to get back down there to Houston, Texas.
Everybody go check it out. I know I'll be checking it out. And Zach, again, appreciate the time, and I'll look forward when we get to this again sometime down the road.
Great to talk to you there, Phil.